Hello! Welcome to my anatomy and physiology of singing! Or at least an introduction into it anyway. I feel like, what is a singing blog without anatomy and physiology, right? Psh, everybody loves hearing about it. So, the first thing that we're gonna do is, we're gonna learn, muscles, tons of muscles, all these muscles, and then there's, muscles over here somewhere, muscles, more muscles, and then there's going to be quizzes and stuff, and you're just going to have to memorize a ton of stuff, and it's going to be awesome, and you're going to be so completely bored out of your minds, right? Because seriously, I have sat in so many lectures where you go through all the muscles, and you know what? Don't get me wrong, they're totally useful classes, and you really do need to know your anatomy if you're going to be a clinician, for sure. And really good pedagogues out there definitely know their anatomy and their physiology of voice. But it's really boring when you're just sitting there talking about, the bone structures and the cartilages and the muscles and where they attach, and you're going through this laundry list of the muscles, and you go respiratory system, then laryngeal system, and then you might talk a little bit about the soft palate possibly in a pedagogy class, tongue, and then lips and stuff, and then, right, you're out of there. So those lectures are boring to give, and they're boring to receive. So I'm not going to do any of that stuff. Also, the other reason I'm not going to do it is because there are literally a kabajillion blogs and resources online for that kind of stuff. You can go to Wikipedia for a lot of that stuff. They have some nice illustrations there. They have the Grey's Anatomy textbook stuff because that's all public domain images now. So they're all over Wikipedia showing you, those are drawn in the really old sketches essentially of anatomical points in the body. And so you can feel free to look into any of that you want. You could look up the diaphragm. You could look up intercostals. You could look up abdominals. You can look up vocal folds. You can look up any of these things. You might just want to Google search human, right? Instead of, some other animal or something. But you can find a lot of stuff on it. And there's a ton of textbooks on it too, right? It's in every single pedagogy textbook, they go through the anatomy of the voice. And usually that includes breathing, larynx, the laryngeal system, and the vocal tract above that, typically, and some facial, right? Lips and such, and smiling. So there's a ton of resources out there. So I don't want to be another one of those resources going through the muscles. What I am going to do, my main goal, overarching goal, I actually want to talk about a little bit more of the big picture. So instead of getting lost in all these teeny little anatomical landmarks, I want to talk about sort of the overarching, how does all this stuff work together? How do they kind of unify a bit? How does this group of muscles balance with that group of muscles? And what are the different ways your body can combine? And I'm not going to go through all the ways, but essentially getting a sense for the fact that there is a lot of ways you can go about breathing. There's a lot of ways that the voice can influence your breathing and vice versa, and the resonance can influence the voice. And then that can influence the breathing. I mean, there's so many interactions there. And so I just want to get a sense for how, not how complex it is per se, but just in how flexible it all is, and how your body can use different strategies depending on the demands of the moment. And that, because it's somewhat unpredictable, just getting a sense for what your body does under certain situations can give you a sense of how to be flexible and how to play around with your technique in a safe way, hopefully, without sort of risking any kind of injury or overdoing something. Because I think that that's probably one of the most useful tools for beginning singers, but especially for professionals or throughout singing through your lifetime, as your health changes, as your hormone levels change, as, if you're a woman and you're going through menopause, right? All these things change, and your body changes, and the way you might go about singing might need to adjust and change as those things occur as you grow older. So the technique that you perfected, maybe say you were 25 and you found this amazing teacher and you got this perfect technique and you're singing fantastically. That might not be the exact same strategy you need to use when you're in your 50s. You might be able to get away with more stuff as you get older, but you also might need to really pay attention to different stuff because your body's shifted, and the way your body is combining to sing in a nice, easy way is going to shift along with that. So that's what I wanted to really focus on, because I think when you get into it's the forest for the trees thing, when you get into all the little teeny muscles and stuff, people get really obsessed over controlling these tiny little groups of muscles. But what you really need to focus on, or I think what's personally I believe is more effective to focus on, is sort of the gestalt, the big picture. How does the brain coordinate all this stuff, and what coordinations happen without you even being aware of them? And can you benefit from that? Can you, find something that you don't have to think about that hard, but that works really great? Because that's really the ultimate goal, right? To not have to think so hard about technique that you can't even think about singing and creating art anymore because you're focused so much on technique, right? So how do you make that bridge from just technique into, I can just trust that my body can handle this. I've done the training and I've done the discovery of how to do this most effectively for myself and for my body. So how can I can just focus on the character and the acting or the emotion or the lyrics, I can just focus on the art rather than on what my voice is doing, or what my body is doing at any given point in time. So less about control, more about flexibility and discovery, and hopefully finding some kind of ease. So this is really going to be more physiology than anatomy. I might mention muscles as I go along, but like I said, you can seriously pause the video, whatever. You can even Google in, even if you don't know how to spell it, if you could just Google it, Google, arytenoid. You might not know how to spell arytenoid, but if you Google something that approximates what you think should be arytenoid, and you put in voice and human, it'll probably correct it. Seriously, because there's so many resources out there. I think Google probably knows what you're talking about when you're searching for something like that. So, but also, if you can't find any resources, I would be happy to post some more, maybe in links down below or something. So just leave me some questions if you would like more resources. Wikipedia is not always correct about everything, but it's pretty decent on anatomy, actually. For human anatomy, it's pretty decent. Pretty decent resource for that. So anyways, let's get started on that. So I am going to go through the systems. I'm going to talk about respiratory and laryngeal and vocal tract, but I'll probably pull in some of the complexity of the relationships between those things in each segment. So if I'm in respiratory, I might really focus on respiratory, in terms of how it's coordinating together. But I do want to talk a little bit about how that influences your voice, because that's kind of the whole point, right? What else are you learning about your breath for? So I guess other than living and breathing. And I also want to throw, it's kind of important. Respiration's kind of important for life. But I also want to talk a little bit about biological, really kind of the overriding biological need for these different systems, because that also can sometimes influence just how your body reacts to stuff if you have a giant coughing fit because something went down the wrong way, it's because your larynx's primary thing wants to protect your airway. And you want to keep food and liquid out of your lungs. And by coughing a ton, it kind of blows the stuff out of your airway. So it's actually a good thing, even though singers might think, oh no, coughing could be damaging to my voice. It's yeah, well, if liquid is going to go in your lungs, just go ahead and let yourself cough that. Okay, cough it up, take a little break. Your vocal folds can heal a bit from that kind of coughing, because you do have healing factors in your voice. Isn't that nice to know? That tissue heals, just like if you burned your finger, it heals. The human body is wonderful for that. So things like that. I'll bring up things like that. If questions have along the way, go ahead and post any questions you might have. I'll try to check back and perhaps address them in other videos and things like that. So let us continue and get started. And I might break this up into maybe 1 or 2 or 3 different videos for respiration, depending on how much I get through. I'm going to try to keep the videos at sort of a workable length. so that hopefully if you wanted to search through them, it's not going to be like a giant pain in your butt to find where the heck I talked about that one thing. All right, so welcome to anatomy and physiology, woo! Mostly physiology, woo! And the stuff that I didn't really get from pedagogy, but that I've learned from going through my own therapy and training to become a therapist, and what I feel has helped me in singing. That's the other thing, I'm making that connection. Last little note on this, most of my reference, my primary citation, because I'm getting a PhD at some point in time, and I like citations. And it's a textbook, so it's not like peer-reviewed or anything, but it has a lot of peer-review references in it. But my primary citation is this textbook right here. Preclinical speech science is actually a class I took in my master's degree for speech-language pathology, and I actually took the class with this person right here. She was like one half. We had another instructor named Brad Story, who is a really great physicist and voice-focused person in our field. And but Jenny Hoyt, she's fantastic, and she is a really well-known, really big researcher into respiration. But she's been in the speech-language pathology field for a long time, and she's done studies with singers and with non-singers and all kinds of different disorders and diseases. And she's just fantastic and phenomenal, and like everything, you know, she rivals the sun essentially in her brilliance, but also like super positive and super wonderful. So just want to give mad props to Jenny Hoyt because she's fantastic. And it might sound like I'm kissing her butt, but literally, like, I want to be her so bad when I grow up. Okay. Anyway, hope you stick around. So, respiration, here we go. See you guys. Bye.